All right, so we back with another episode from the Porter Perspective. This is your host, Elijah Porter. The topic of the day is centered around minimum wage, specifically in California. Apparently, California has raised minimum wage, having certain requirements as it relates to the hourly rate, $16, $20 per hour. There's some hypocrisy that's being called out now against some of the elected officials that are in office that champion this bill. Unfortunately, with politics, a lot of times it seems more retroactive than proactive. And the gear of this channel is to always be proactive, to think things through. And in thinking things through and focusing on the next 100 years, we think about how our actions can impact others. Apparently, there wasn't a lot of thought into this. Sometimes things can sound better than what the results actually lead to. So we're going to check this out, unpack this. And I know some of the commentators, different individuals that were emailing, they mentioned Democrats, that Democrats are the issue, that Democrats are the problem. So I pose that to you, like, are Democrats really the issue? Or is it more so the ideology that comes with that? So let's unpack and go from there.
Bring in California restaurant owner and chef Andrew Gruel. Andrew, good to see you. So, Andrew, make sense of this for me. You're a California guy. If $20 an hour is good for California restaurant workers, why isn't $20 an hour good for Gavin Newsom's restaurant workers?
Well, this is classic Newsom, classic California. Yeah. Put another feather in Newsom's hat of hypocrisy. This actually reminds me a little bit of the pandemic. No, restaurants.
And as we move forward, Andrew Gruel is giving his perspective. Be conscious of an individual's own bias that they may or may not have. All right.
Newsom, hypocrisy. The guy can't champion or, stand behind all the things that he kind of virtue signals for. But that's just typical. And I mean, that actually applies not just to Newsom. That applies to all of the politicians who are out there talking about we need $50 minimum wage, which is what Barbara Lee said. But then the government workers themselves are only making $15, $16, $17 an hour. And it's absurd, but it's typical. It's completely typical.
The problem here is that for a lot of this, you're thinking that by increasing the minimum wage, and this lets you know a lot of people who just either don't operate business or they're not thinking this through thoroughly. But you think that by increasing the minimum wage, that automatically translates to those individuals being in a better financial position, not recognizing that it changes and shifts the intention of the business, because now the business has to cut costs. And so they're either going to shift the increased costs to the customers or to the clients. So now that means inflated goods for the same value and nothing actually changes. And at the same time, they're probably going to cut employees to be able to make up for the losses. And then for those employees that are left in those respective roles, they may have to do double or 3 times the amount of work. Like, these are just all just logical things that if you just sit and you just think and you process, you can evaluate that from that lens. So you have to look at other ways in which you can incentivize growth, incentivize these businesses to hire, and cutting some of the costs and expenses that a lot of the businesses have.
Typical of California.
So we have immediately seen, Andrew, layoffs. We have seen price increases. So that's inflation that actually layoffs and price increases hurts the people that this new $20 minimum wage.
Just said this. Literally, we just said this.
These politicians claim they're trying to help.
This bill was marketed as something that was supposed to help the workers and hurt the corporations, but it's actually helping the corporations and it's hurting the workers in the long run. And by virtue, these small businesses as well, who ultimately are going to have to pay a lot more than this, but don't have the money to automate. You see, they're laying off all these workers, and the workers that are staying there, as that girl said, they're going to have double the amount of work, but then the costs are going to go up, the prices are going to go up, and all those workers in those communities now are going to have to spend more money because the prices of everything have already gone up. You see, they don't think these things through. If they wanted to help the worker, they could have cut payroll taxes, which is the highest in the nation. They could have cut the ETT, which nobody knows where that goes to, unemployment insurance, any of those things, put more money in the workers' pockets, which then could have helped the businesses, and they can incentivize the businesses to pay their workers more by virtue of changing that incentive structure.
That's too common sense, though, Andrew. You're a restaurant owner, though. Tell us what impact.
Literally, this is just common sense. This is not anything complicated. You didn't need a degree for this. You just have to just think about who this can impact, and that's empathy at its base level. Who else should I be considering in this action? Who else could this directly or indirectly affect in a positive or in a negative way? Or am I just doing something that just sounds good? And that's most people.
This has had on your ability to run your restaurant? We got about 30 seconds.
Well, I think in general, what this is going to do is it's going to kind of change the whole entire economy, because prices are going to go up so significantly. And we're going to see that from the distributors, from the food products all around, even if you're not part of this kind of fast food coalition that got targeted by this bill. You see, because by proxy, they're targeting everybody. So it's going to be difficult. Fortunately, we pay our workers a ton of money because we believe in this, but we're not doing it because the government's mandating us to.
But you just highlighted the knock-on effects that these boneheads and bozos never, ever think about. Andrew, thank you so much for being here always.
Man, I didn't even know that they were talking like that on national news. Okay, this is Fox, though. This is Fox. This is Fox. And again, when we're listening to content, we're always being very discerning, because everybody has an angle. It's not that everything is necessarily negative with something, but we don't want to oversell. And so Fox is typically leaning more so Republican in a lot of instances. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that they don't have valid points. And there was definitely a lot of merit in what they were saying, and being conscious over the language, not getting too much into that. It gets interesting, but I wanted us to check out something else real quick too.
Andrew Gruhl. We'll see you very soon.
Let's see. Let's take a look at this. All right, let me know if you can see this. All right, so the minimum wage is the minimum hourly rate that nearly all employees must be paid. California employees benefit from annual increases in California's minimum wage. All right. Because at the end of the day, the government, the intention appears to have been to improve the lives of those who have less. And the thought process behind that, or the way to achieve that, was by increasing the minimum wage. The minimum wage is the minimum hourly rate that nearly all California employees must be paid for their work by law. In California, the applicable minimum wage depends on the size of the employer. In 2023, California's minimum wage is $15.50 per hour. The federal minimum wage is currently $7.25 per hour. I've lived in California. Everyone knows that the taxes in California are absolutely outrageous. Outrageous. The cost of living over there is absolutely outrageous. And if you notice, it's been a great migration of a lot of businesses, a lot of influencers, a lot of VCs moving to New York, which is not really that much better. Moving to Miami, moving to Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas. There are a lot of people moving out of. There's been an exodus of prominent, profitable, powerful people moving out of California just due to the cost of living. All right. Some of it seems contrived, but let's keep going. The federal minimum wage is currently $7.25 per hour. It applies to covered workers. We need to look at what covered workers means, unless the employee works in a state that has established a higher minimum wage like California. And so even just understanding this from the legal context, right, where the federal law has established the minimum. However, that doesn't preempt or prevent the state from establishing something that is higher. So you have your threshold, and then the state can impose higher. Okay. Because California law has set a minimum wage at a higher rate than a federal minimum wage, most California employees are entitled to the wage set by California's minimum wage law. All right, and let's take a look at this. Let's move around. Okay. So I want you all to take a look at this part. So the minimum wage in California has historically depended on whether the employer has 25 or fewer employees or more than 25 employees, as is shown on the following table. All right. Y'all see this table right here? After 2023, the California minimum wage will be adjusted automatically by using a formula that is tied to the Consumer Price Index. Importantly, however, in any year, the governor determines that economic conditions do not support a scheduled increase, the governor can temporarily suspend that year's increase. That's a lot of control and authority for the governor. California Constitution allows local governments to set a minimum wage applicable within the government's jurisdiction that is higher than the state's minimum wage. Several cities and counties have enacted ordinances that set a higher minimum wage for some or all employees who work within the boundaries of the local government. So, all right. Let's get to some of the exceptions. A lower state minimum wage applies to certain California employees, and some employees are not entitled to any minimum wage at all. Those categories of employees include the following. Learners are employees who are working a job in which they have no similar or related experience that may be paid 85% of the minimum wage during their first 160 hours of employment. Disabled employees may be paid a wage set by the Labor Commission for a period of 1 year subject to renewal. Camp employees of an organized camp, including student employees, camp counselors, and program counselors, can be paid 85% of the minimum wage. Immediate family members of an employer are not subject to California's minimum wage laws. Immediate family members include the employer's parent, spouse, child, or legally adopted child. So this definitely leads to influx or resurgence of having family-owned, family-ran businesses, just simply because of the cost that you potentially could save. All right, certain nonprofit organizations that have special licenses issued by the Labor Commission can pay their employees less than the minimum wage. The appropriate minimum wage is set by the Labor Commission, and this exception is usually limited to rehabilitation facilities and shelter workshops. Outside salesperson are employees who spend more than half of their working time away from the employer's place of business selling goods or services. All right. So, and of course, independent contractors. Let's see. The main premise of this right here that I wanted you to walk away from, I just wanted you to get a little bit more layering on just how the law is working, the minimum wage law, how it affects other entities, other individuals involved, how it can potentially impact you if you live there. So I think that this is a great conversation. We definitely going to keep an eye out on California. I can foresee more businesses closing, and we'll go from there. Stay tuned. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe to The Porter Perspective.